Rolling.
Today is February 26, 2019. I'm Adrienne Falaise, and it is my honor to be here with Julie Ann Johnson for the interviews in Oral History of Television. And we are at Television Academy headquarters in North Hollywood, California.
Rolling.
All right. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today, Julie.
Thank you. This is quite an honor.
So we like to start just by getting some background information. So the first question we always ask is, what was your name at birth?
Julie Ann Johnson.
And when and where were you born?
I was born and raised in Fullerton, California.
Did you grow up there as well?
I grew up there, graduated from Fullerton Union High School in 1958.
And tell us a little bit about your childhood. What was it like growing up there?
Well, a little bit of dysfunctional family. Parents divorced and remarried, and that's difficult to adjust to. But my mother left to go to South America prior to my going into high school, and with her husband, my stepfather, because he had a job down there in Venezuela. And so that's kind of an important time to have your mother when you're 13 years old. And but anyway, long story. High school, really, the sports department at the high school is what kept me alive. I come from a sports family. My father was a coach. He coached there in Fullerton for 33 years. And he preferred 7th and 8th graders. And he would get the boys ready for high school. And my grandfather, maternal grandfather, mother's father, is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he played against Babe Ruth, played with Ty Cobb, and he still holds the world record for triples. He played right field. He was a cleanup hitter. And had they kept better records in the earlier days, he would have had even better records. But he's in all the baseball books.
What's his name?
His name is Samuel Earl Crawford. And they used to call him Wahoo Sam because he came from Wahoo, Nebraska. But he played for Detroit Tigers most of his career, 19 years in the major leagues. Quite a man, quite a man.
Were you close with him?
I was with him when he passed, somewhere in the 50s there, when he had a major stroke and he never came out of it. And I was with him with my mom, and that was quite traumatic to me. But I was able, when he was placed in his casket, I took a baseball bat and a baseball glove and ball, and I was able to put that in with him, and that made me feel good.
Wow. So it sounds like sports was a big part of your childhood then.
The what?
Sports was a big part of your childhood?
Yeah, going back to Fullerton High School, I mean, I had the abilities, the hand-eye coordination. I could play any sport. I was a swimmer. In fact, the school program there gave me on my senior year an award for having the most Girl Athletic Association credits, and which was nice. But I just went for everything. After school sports, whatever the season was, I would play. And when you do sports, your mind's off all the other stuff. So I think that's what got me through the most, was the sports I was able to play.
Were you kind of a daredevil at all in your younger days?
No, I wouldn't say a daredevil. I just said nothing. I was fearless. In fact, I think it was my freshman year of high school. Basketball was one of my favorite sports, and I was up at the neighbor's house practicing after school one night, late afternoon, and I threw a hook shot, and it hit the rim, and it bounced behind the backstop. So, okay, I gotta go up on the roof and get it. So I hopped the fence and got up on the roof, and then I couldn't resist. And once I got the ball to go like that through the hoop over the thing, well, the whole backstop gave away with me. and I went down head first to the cement. And I guess I was breaking my fall with my hands. And I shattered my wrists, both of them at the same time, and I had my head was out to here. And luckily, the lady that lived there was a nurse. And she was just coming home, and she was driving into her driveway, and she sees me laying there, this half of me on the cement, the other half of me on the backstop. And her son, they jumped out of the car. She said, go get Art quick. So my poor dad, oh, he must have, to see me like that, unconscious, laying there, it had to be horrendous for him. Well, I can't wait for an ambulance. I can't wait for an ambulance. He just gently picked me up and put me in the back seat of his car, and they drove me to the emergency. And by then I was starting to come to. I shouldn't have survived that. That kind of a head injury and falling that far was, I shouldn't have survived, but I did. And anyway, 2 casts like this with your arms bent for over 3 months. And you couldn't bend your arms at all, just like that. He pushed all the bones back into place, this doctor. And then you went to the half cast, so at least you could bend your arms. And then when they took the casts off, all there was a bone and skin, you know. So, but anyway, I came back, and just another traumatic thing in high school that you go through. But what was the other question?
Well, did you go right back to playing sports
Oh
after
yeah,
that, or
oh
were
yes.
you dissuaded at all?
No. I went right back. I mean, you in those, and you didn't even get pain medicine. You know, you got an aspirin if you were lucky. So you dealt with it. You learned to deal with the pain until it subsides. And of course, in stunts, ice is your best friend. And it always amazes me when people say, well, I left this business unscathed. No injuries, or few, if any. And I think, boy, they must have had some soft pads to land on, because it hurts. You know, you do these stair falls. I've done over a dozen of them. I went down a flight of stairs once in a pair of shorts and a halter top. I got thrown down, and of course, the middle of my back hit the edge of the stairs and cracked a vertebrae in the middle of my back. But again, you don't go to the hospital. You go home and you think, uh-oh, something doesn't feel right back there. So you go to your doctor. We had a great doctor, a chiropractor named Dr. Terwilliger, and he had an x-ray machine. He'd always make sure he x-rayed you, and he could tell something was wrong. And he said, well, yeah, here's the vertebrae, it's cracked. He said, ice and heat, that's all you can do. Okay, thank you very much. So it's, well, I got into that now. How did I get there?
We were just talking about being injured and playing sports.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, injured. I've had 6 of them. So, but you don't escape this business without injuries. This is a pain-filled career, in a way, and you have to be quick on your feet.
It sounds like you were from a young age.
Yes, because there's sports again.
Yeah. Did you watch much television at all when you were little?
Oh my, we had, gosh, I think I was around maybe 10 years old, 9 or 10 years. We had that Muntz TV with the little screen. And I got to watch the Westerns on the weekends, and but that was about it. But most of the time I come home from school, and if I didn't have homework, it was change my clothes and get my bicycle. I'd put my skates on and ride my bicycle with my skates on over to the park. We lived right behind the park, to the basketball court. And I took my basketball with me. Well, I could chase the ball quicker if I had my skates on. So I skated and shot baskets.
Did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh. Well, my idol was Esther Williams, because she was a swimmer. And my father took me, I think, to every Esther Williams movie that came out. And I think he liked her as much as I liked her. But to see what she did in these movies, I thought, well, maybe that's what I want to be, you know. And I remember for my 50 cents a week allowance, that was for washing the car, mowing the lawn, ironing my stepfather's work shirts, doing the dishes, raking the doing all these chores that I would do for my 50 cents a week. I'd take the quarter and I'd tape it to a little thing and send it to Esther Williams Fan Club to get a signed picture back from her. And the other quarter, you could go to the local, in La Habra where I lived too, prior to Fullerton, there was a little movie theater. Well, you could go to the movie for 15 cents and get Coke and a popcorn for your other quarter. So that was my first inkling about the movies, was Esther Williams.
Mm-hmm. So then you graduated high school, you said 1958.
58. Yeah.
So then what was your career path from that point? How did you wind up getting into stunts?
Okay, well, stunts found me. I didn't find stunts. But first I had to go to, I was 17, not 18 yet. I graduated at 17, and of course I had a boyfriend, and he went to UCLA. I'm a senior, but I met him at the beach, and of course that's what girls and boys do. But my mother got wind of it in South America. She says, "Oh, no, send her down to me, she's just going to end up pregnant." And so I didn't have a choice. Before I know it, I'm on a plane heading for South America. So, and they lived out in the jungle down there, and because my stepfather was a tool and die maker. He made parts for oil rigs. So, very primitive living. But there was a little off the side of the road American place where there was a bar and a restaurant and a place the women could get their. There's a lot of Americans down there at that time working, and the wives would go to the place to get their hair done. And then next door was a little record shop, and then a gift shop. Well, my mother ended up running the gift shop. And then they bought the record shop, and I ran the record shop. So that was for like 2.5 years. And then I said, I want to go home. And it was getting rough down there politically. You know, they would have the federales going up and down the highway with their guns, and they said, yeah, she should probably go home. So they sent me home. And of course, Mr. Wright was gone. So I knew I had to get a job and work and make a living and pay rent and stuff. So I put in an application in Santa Ana for a department store called Bullock's. And they hired me, and I worked there for a year. In those days, too, you couldn't work past 8 hours. It was 9 to 5. But if you're going to be good at retail and working in those stores, and they right away placed me as an assistant manager because of my sales ability. So the assistant manager, okay, I lost my train of thought. That happens. So to be good, you'd have to be there earlier than 9 o'clock. So you would watch your clock. You'd be there at 7:30 or 8, and you go down, okay, put the time clock thing in, stamp your card, and then you go back up to the section and work. And then at 5 o'clock, you'd say, oops, got to go down, put the card in, clock out, and go back up to the department and finish up and get ready for the next day. You never got off your feet in those kind of jobs. And so I did that, and then they had a new store here in Sherman Oaks that they opened. It was there for years, and they wanted me to have the experience of opening up a new store. So I came up here to open a new store, and thinking I was going to become a buyer for one of the departments. And they were thinking they were going to be training me for that. Well, I used to eat lunch with the models And the models wanted me to be a model. And I said, you guys, I said, I can't be a model. I said, I'm an athlete. And I said, you guys have this certain aura about you. You know you're beautiful. I said, I never thought myself that way. And I said, I can't walk like you guys. We always had a good time laughing. And they said, well, why don't you? And I said, and now I'm making $65 a week working for 6 days a week and never getting overtime or anything. But I said, I can't live on this salary anymore. This is brutal. And they said, well, why don't you go see this guy in Hollywood called Chris Peterson? So he had a commercial production company, and maybe he can use you for something. And so I went and applied and went to meet him, and he said, well, I'll pay a good switchboard operator $100 a week. I thought, $100 a week? Oh my God. I said, but I don't know how to use a switchboard. And don't worry, Eve will show you what to do. You just plug these cords in, answer the phones. And now I'm sitting down. And that wasn't going to work for me either. I can't get up. I got to be here at this phone and these wires. So as time went on, I was with them 2 years, and I would. They had some actresses there that were unit managers or production assistants, and they would bring me their work while I'm on the switchboard and type up their order forms and reports and things. So I learned a lot about production. And then clients would come in and they would say, gee, you'd be a great double for Doris Day. And I say, what's a double? They say, well, they're the ones that do the dangerous stuff, the ones that, so the actress doesn't get hurt. Well, light bulb goes off on my head. And I said, well, I wonder how you become a double. Well, then I find out there's an answering service in town called Teddy O'Toole's. They had all the stunt people at Teddy O'Toole's. So the production companies would call Teddy's, and they would say, send me 4 or 5 girls that are 5'6½", weigh 110 pounds. Send me who you have. So you'd get this audition to go and meet the director on the set. And every time I went, I just looked more like the actress than anybody else. So they'd go like this, I'll take her. Now it's up to you to perform whatever they want. So it was learning on the job. But, and then we had different avenues once you got established, which was one of the best things for me, to be established for the first 7, 8 years, to get established. Because once the doors shut, and the Screen Actors Guild and the producers said, okay, the stuntmen's groups are going to be in control of hiring. You're not going to work unless they hire you. So I was...
Walk us through that a little bit, though. Like, you could just walk in and sign up with Teddy's, or did you have to audition for her?
I had pulled together a resume, and I had on there athlete, all sports, and I had done one little thing for the production company there on a, I can't even remember what it was, but I did something, so that was a credit. And so I went to meet Teddy, and she said, well, she explained the situation and the business, and she said, I'll just send you on the stuff I think you're right for. I said, okay. Well, once I got with her, I was able to get a commercial. Oh, that was it, a commercial I did for Magic Spray Sizing for the company there. The casting director said, Julie, there's an audition across the street, go for it. It's jumping over an ironing board. So I went and did it, and I got the job for Magic Spray Sizing, and they reversed the film, so it looked like you can't run away from ironing day, back and forth over the thing. And so that was a good credit. And my God, I think it was $16,000 total for that commercial. And I thought, wow. Well, I started getting called more and more away from because I got off the switchboard and became a production assistant and a production coordinator. And, but now I'm being called more and more to go do auditions for stunts. And finally, the president came to Julie, and I said, I know, I got to pick one or the other to do stunts or here. I said, I got to pick stunts. So they understood, and they were happy for me, and I went on from there.
So did you have to be in SAG then to really
Yes,
pursue the career?
yeah, I got in that through SAG through the commercial that I did.
Okay.
And it was like $200 to join at that time. I don't know what it is today, but yeah, I was able to get in there. And then, and it was strange because it seemed like the first 5-6 years, every job that I got was to double the actress, and it was just myself and the director working out what he wanted. He'd tell me what he'd want, and I'd say, fine, I will do it. And so I would get director requests now. They would remember. And I didn't work with another stunt person for a long time in the beginning. It was just me and the director, and I coordinated it with what he wanted, and that's how I got established. And then wardrobe people, hairdressers, they would remember me, and in production meetings they would say, oh, Julie Johnson's perfect, get her because we don't have to do anything. Fine, get her, you know. So it was really up to you then you're as good as your last job, and that's what you did.
So was there any special training or like physical requirements that you had to meet to get into?
No, I took some judo karate lessons, a few of those things, and then all of a sudden I started working with other stunt people, and then you work it out with them, whatever has to be done. But all my stuff in the beginning was like, they were all falls, Pratt falls, stair falls, running, car driving. That seemed like what I was doing for all that time. And working for first-time directors sometimes was the hardest because they're nervous, and you'd have a stair fall to do for them, and maybe they'd already placed the actress on the ground after the stair fall, and they would say, "Okay, I gotta have you land right here, and your head has to be right there and facing that way." Okay. So in your mind, you've got to figure all of this out in your fall and make sure that you land just like he wants you to. And I would always do it.
That's great. So just to kind of start us off, how would you describe the role of a stunt person? What was your job?
Well, my job was to please the director and the producer. Foremost, and to be on time, et cetera, et cetera. As a stunt person, that's what you're called to do, is to be the person that's going to keep the actor from getting hurt, and to make them look good, and please that director.
Well, let's go through some of the early TV shows you worked on, where you doubled and took these falls and things.
Oh dear, one was, well, I did an Art Linkletter show. They wanted me to go crashing through a breakaway window, which I did, which was another credit. And then I was called, I think it was a Petticoat Junction. Again, they'd already placed the actress in this big mud hole, and she was tripped and fell into this pit of mud. Well, they'd already filmed her in the mud, and now I had to come along and do the actual trip and fall into the mud. And Don Weiss was the director, and it was all like fuller's earth and mud, really bad, and a pit. And so I had to come running around the corner out of the woods and trip myself. And I said, well, the best way to trip myself is with a log, a big tree or something that's going across there. So I placed that, and I did a slow motion thing. And then I da-da. And he said, well, how are you going to keep yourself from going out and sticking and staying? And I said, don't worry about it, I'll do it. Well, anyway, I did on the actual take, first take they're going to do, come screaming around the corner, and somebody moved my log, my trip log, and I had to come to an abrupt stop, and I said, whoa, 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 my trip log got moved. So I got it placed back, and I went back and I did it, well, I used my arm against the front of that pit to stop myself, and facing the mud and everything, and then look that way. And jammed the shoulder, of course. And that was kind of the first little injury that I knew that, wow, this hurts.
Is there a medic on set?
No, 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 no. You go home, ice. That's what you did.
So you said you would usually just talk with the director about what the stunt would be. Did you ever see a script of like what the stunt would be written?
No, it was just the director said, this is what I need you to do. And that's all. Like for the Doris Day show, when she had her TV show, I did all of the titles for her show in San Francisco, of her running and jumping on and off trolley cars and running down the street holding her hat on and doing different stuff for her there, and riding a bicycle for her and that kind of stuff. And then anytime she had a little fall or something to do, I would do it.
So
But it's just that this is what I need you to do. And I said, okay.
So talk about how you did become Doris Day's stunt double.
Well, again, they were in production when I was there. They would say, you'd be a great double for Doris Day. And, well, it comes along around 3 or 4 years later, I get an audition to double for Doris Day on a movie called Caprice.
So that was 1967, I think, was that movie.
Well, yeah, okay. And so I go out to Fox, 20th Century Fox, and I meet the unit manager, and there was another girl there too, but she was a lot shorter. And he looked at me and he said, you're perfect. And he says, you're just going to go up to Mammoth Mountain and hang from a helicopter ladder for about 40 feet. Okay. That's fine. So, with the stuntman. So that was my first doubling a Doris Day. It was kind of funny though, when I was on location in the outfit when she first saw me, after the helicopter stuff, there was more for her to do, for me to do for her. And I had this dress on, and I hadn't met her before. And the unit manager brought her to my dressing room for her to okay me. And I came out, and she kind of looked me up, and she's kind of skinny, isn't she? He said, oh, no, don't worry about that. We're going to fill her out. We'll fill her out. And she said, okay. So from there on, I doubled, like I said, I doubled on her series, and was able to double her.
When you're doubling someone, do you like work with the actress or observe her movements or anything?
Oh yeah, you try to emulate her as much as possible on the way she moves and acts and everything. You become very observant to make sure that you become the best double you can be.
You also worked on the Beverly Hillbillies?
Oh yes, that was for, excuse me, for Nancy Culp on the Beverly Hillbillies. I had to row a boat out in the middle of Long Beach Harbor for her. And I mean, that was, I think that's the only one I did. I'm not sure. There were so many shows. I was just going, my phone never stopped ringing. It just, every week there was something to go do.
And then I think another early one was The Man from U.N.C.L.E. you worked on.
Yeah, I did A Man from U.N.C.L.E. I did sometimes when the actress needed a double. Again, usually a fall or a scuffle or a fight or something. I would double on that show, and The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. Once in a while I'd do a little part, a little nondescript thing. So it's, my stomach's snarling.
What's a nondescript?
Nondescript means it could be anything. You could be anybody. It could be male, female. It's just a piece of action that they want done that doesn't require doubling. It's just you're being yourself.
And was that common for stunt people to get those kinds of jobs?
Yeah, yeah. They would need extra people to be in a scene, and maybe it's a barroom fight or a melee or something like that. Then you would do those too as yourself or in costume, whatever it called for. And but most of the nondescript jobs go to the guys, the men.
Why is that?
Well, because it's their buddy system. So if they get hired by the coordinator, then that guy will hire him on his next show. And we've been fighting that for a long time. There are police women, there's military women, there are women in every aspect of work. So why aren't, if you've got 6 ND stunt people, why aren't 3 of them women?
And your autobiography, I think you mentioned that Abby Singer helped to get you some ND work?
Yeah, Abby was at Universal at the time. There was an open casting call for people to come in and meet the casting people. So at the end of my job at Peterson, I quick ran out there, and I was one of the last ones to be seen. And on my resume and picture was all-around athlete and stunts. And he said, "Oh, you do stunt work?" And I said, "Well, yeah." Yeah. And so he says, "Well, I want you to come and meet these." There was a big production unit manager meeting going on. And so he took me to this room, and there was about 12, 15 guys sitting around a table. And he said, "I want you to meet Julie Johnson, blah, blah, blah." And actually, Universal was my mother's studio, the first major studio that I worked for. So, and then, of course, I worked many, many shows after that.
I think another early one you did was Star Trek, the original.
And the Star Trek, I did that with Paramount, was one of the first major actresses I doubled, which was Celeste Yarnell. Unfortunately, just passed away. But she was really a neat lady. You know, sometimes somebody walk through your life and they so impress you that you never forget them. Well, I only doubled her that one time on Star Trek, and I never saw her again. But I always remembered her because of the way she treated me, I guess.
Do you recall the stunt that you did on Star Trek?
It was some kind of a fight. It's in my book, The Stunt Woman, with David Robb. The picture of her, you couldn't tell us apart. We were like twins.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always good for me. Once they put me in costume and hair, we were twins, who really almost whoever I doubled.
Talk a little bit about that process and working within a wardrobe that maybe didn't allow for padding and that kind of thing.
Oh, well, yeah, in the early days, many, they put you in the tight clothes. There's no place to put a pad, elbow or knees or anything else, and you just, that's where the injuries come, and you get hurt. Now, bone bruises are the hardest and longest to heal. The bone bruises are terrible, but you were called to do that job, and you did it.
What about working in high heels?
And high heels, those are ankle busters, and those are always difficult, running especially. But if you had to do a stair fall or something, it didn't matter, but usually, you know, you were running on something.
Would you ever do any training on your own, like in heels, running in heels, or something to practice like that?
No, because I wore heels when I was working for Bullocks. I would wear heels. I had heels that that you wore, so I was used to wearing them. But you just, I don't know, your mind goes into a mode of, okay, I have to do this, so I'm going to do it.
So you mentioned Universal and Star Trek, I think shot at Desilu. Were there certain production companies or studios or facilities that you felt were better equipped for stunts than others?
No, they're probably all the same. You know, you get called to meet an audition, or somebody submitted your name, said get her. It's really all the same. You go in, you go immediately to wardrobe and hair, and you put on whatever they tell you to put on, and then you go taken to the set, and they tell you what you have to do.
Were you usually told in advance how many days' work you would be getting, or would that vary?
Sometimes you'd say, well, we're going to need you for 2-3 days, or just a day. It varied a lot.
So let's go through some of the types of stunts that you did. You mentioned stair falls you did a lot of?
Oh, yeah, stair falls. But the only two things I say I didn't do were in any big fashion. I rode tandem on motorcycles, but on horses and motorcycles I didn't do, because you have to start on those when you're like 3 years old to get to know the balance and have that horse sense. If you don't start early, you're not going to have it. And that's were the two things that I would beg my father for. I would say, Daddy, can I get a horse? No, we can't afford it. Can I get a motor scooter? No, those are murder cycles. So, okay. Two things I didn't get, so I couldn't. I've ridden tandem, but not doing the actual work.
And what sort of precautions are taken on set for these? Like for stair falls, are you always falling on a mattress at the bottom?
No, you go for it. You're hitting whatever. You're going to hit the floor. And usually, sometimes the stairs are carpeted, sometimes they're not.
What about for things like driving? Are there harnesses and seatbelts and?
Well, depending on the severity of the work to be done, some require more safety in them than others, depending on what you have to do with the car. If it's just straight driving, then it's just a straight seatbelt. But if you're going to turn a car over, then the car has to be rigged for that, and you have to have a certain seatbelts for that. But it's all in your special effects and your coordinator and yourself. You all work together on what is needed for that job.
So who are the cast and crew members that you work most closely with on set?
Well, special effects is very vital to you. Special effects, and then of course the coordinator. You know, to have a coordinator. But again, there weren't a lot of coordinators when I started out. It was just you and the director.
Do you know about when that changed? Was there
in the 70s? Okay, Kathleen Nolan, our first Screen Actors Guild president, female. I can't say enough about her because of what she helped us with in our lives. If we hadn't had her, like David Robb, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are now because of how they supported us and what they did for us. They just were vital, and especially Kathleen Nolan. Kathleen Nolan and Norma Conley, who was head of the Women's Committee in the 70s, they were known as the dynamic duo. And boy, when they walked in a room, they owned that room. And they were masterful at what they did for women during that time. And they don't get enough gratitude for what they did.
So what did they do? I mean, how were they impactful?
Well, their strength and their encouragement and their inspiration that they exuded to you, to give you, to stand up, to speak up. No other women had done that. And then with Kathleen, the greatest gift that she gave us, and it's been never given by any other president, the greatest gift was that she said to us as stunt women, My door is always open to you. Always. No other president has said that. And they started the first, what they call the Stunt Women Subcommittee, which was really good, and I'm going to try to encourage them to bring it back. We had the Stunt Women Subcommittee off of the Women's Committee, where we would meet, I think it was maybe once a month, and it gave a chance for all the stunt women to maybe air the grievances or talk about the problems, and try to bond more, because that's always been the problem with the women, the stunt women, is the stuntmen pit the women against each other sometimes, and there's always this unsettled thing with the stunt women. I learned from my father, and of course playing sports, it's a team sport, and you learn to work as a team. Well, these girls aren't taught that way, many of them. So there's always that, there's a conflict.
So what were some of the grievances that you had in the 1960s?
Well, the men doubling for the women, the actresses, that we could have done that job. My rent's not paid, but I could have done that job, but I wasn't called, or none of the other stunt women were called. Or the paint downs, where they put the dark skin makeup on you to double for an African American. That was the one of the issues too. Nobody stopped them. No, I mean, we would complain about it, but it's like you can't really complain too much, because if you do, and if somebody knows you're complaining, now that the stuntmen's groups control hiring, you're going to find that your phone's not going to ring very much.
So talk a little bit about that. There were kind of these employment agencies, call-in agencies that were for men only? Like Teddy O'Toole's was for men and women, or just women?
Oh yeah, no, men and women during
Okay.
Teddy O'Toole time.
Okay. And then there were other ones.
But they had the groups, the groups that formed Stuntmen's Association and Stunts Unlimited, which was they broke off from Stuntmen's Association and formed their own group. So now you have different loyalties going too, because there's now two groups. It was kind of like when they split up, it was like a divorce in the family, because it was a difficult time because of the way they split up and formed their, now they had two groups going. So again, loyalties changed, and the business changed, and it was total control with the stuntmen's groups, who was going to work and who wasn't.
Then in 1967, you helped to co-found the Stunt Women's Association of Motion Pictures.
Yes, I co-founded the Stunt Women's Association there was about 12 of us, I think, trying to bond, trying to be the strong group of women that were going to try to make changes and try to be better.
Do you remember who some of those early members were?
Oh gosh. Well, no, I mean,
I have some names here, like Jeannie and Stephanie Epper,
yeah,
Hattie Elder,
yes,
Marilyn Moe,
yes,
Regina Parton,
yes,
Lila Finn,
yes,
Helen Thurston,
yes,
Loretta Rush, Stevie
Yes.
Myers, Polly Burson, and Mae Boss.
yes, and Mae Boss and Polly Burson, yeah.
So you were all active stunt women at
Yes,
that time?
yes.
And so what kind of issues would you discuss at your meetings?
The men doubling women mainly.
Mhm.
That was the biggest issue.
Were you able to bring about any change?
No, in a way it was kind of, to me, it was becoming a tea party. You know, it was just there to go complain. And if you're not going to do something about the complaints, then don't complain. But, and then there was always a couple of snitches in there that would go and tell the stuntmen what we were doing and who we were talking about. And that didn't help the situation any. It was just a lot of young people that were just 20s and 30s. And then the guys would bring these girls into the business. They'd bring either as a girlfriend or whatever. They would bring, all of a sudden there's another new girl in the business. Well, how did she get in? Because there's no rules or regulations. It's jungle rule, and they can do anything they want to do, and they do that today.
So still today, to be a stunt person, you just need to be in SAG? Are there other physical requirements you need?
No, you have to, to be hired, the only ones that are going to hire you are the groups, the stuntmen's groups. And if they don't hire you, you're not going to work. So it's as simple as that. And that's why so many women today are silent. They know what's wrong in their mind and heart, but they can't do anything about it, because the minute they do, and they've used me as the example, you don't want to end up like Julie Johnson, do you? So keep your mouth shut, and maybe you'll work. The double standards. Now with the stuntmen, it's keep your mouth shut, you will work. With the stunt women, it's keep your mouth shut, you might work. So that's the control with no rules. That's a major problem today, still.
Those agencies that you mentioned, Stunts Unlimited, are they now open to both men and women?
No, very few. I think they have one woman, and they're basic fraternities for the men. And once in a while, a woman will come in. And then some of them, they just go by the wayside. It depends on how cooperative you are.
So when you're entering the 1970s now, are you still getting work through Teddy O'Toole's and through recommendations of people you've worked
no,
with?
because you're still with the answering service, but they're no longer sending you out. You're getting your calls from a coordinator saying, "Is Julie available?"
So someone from a show that
From
wants
one
you?
of the groups.
One of the groups.
From one of the stuntmen's groups.
One of the stuntmen's groups,
Yeah,
okay.
that they will call. Now, because they control hiring, so they will call and say, "Julie Johnson available?" And they'll say, "Well, let me find out, yes or no." And that's how your work came in. And I think, like I said, or I was telling the lady, these guys know who to hire. They know who to hire when they want skill and timing. They know who to hire when they owe a favor to another stuntman. They know who to hire when they want a party. And they just know who and what and when to hire.
So what do you think your reputation was in the 60s and 70s? What were you known for?
Well, the kind of stunts that we don't know what's going to happen, get Julie to do it. So in a sense, I'm given the opportunity to succeed or fail. Now, if I failed and didn't make them happy with my ability, they would say, "Well, see, I should have got a guy to do it." If I succeeded in making them happy, then I made their career look good. And this is what some of the young women today don't understand. They say, "Oh, I owe him everything. I owe him my life. I owe him this and I owe him that." No, you don't. You only owe him a good job, a good, safe job. You've made his career by the work you're doing for him. Well, I come from a different time. And now, the women today are confined.
Well, we talked about a few of the different kinds of stunts that you did, pratfalls and fights, and how's your pay scale determined for each of those stunts? Are some considered riskier than others and get paid more? Or?
Yeah, the pay scale. Well, your Screen Actors Guild contract is your base, whatever it is, and then you're adjusted for the difficulty at the end of the day by the coordinator. I'll give you 200 above your contract for the day, or whatever it entailed. There was one time when I worked for Hal Needham on a show called, it was the pilot for The Magician with Bill Bixby. and I get a call from Teddy's saying, "Oh, you got to get ready. Needham needs you in Michigan, Lake Michigan. We're going to do I said, "What am I going to do?" And they said, "Well, I think it's a transfer. You're going to transfer from a speedboat to an airplane." Okay, that means you got to give 150%, you know. So I get on the plane, I go to Michigan, I get to the set the next day, and I get in costume, I go down to the dock where the plane is and the boat is. It's a pontoon, a boat with plane with pontoons. And I see Hal down the way, and I wave at him, and then I happen to see the airplane, and I see ice on the pontoon. It's like this. And I said, well, we're going to, in my mind, I was saying, we're going to transfer from the boat to the pontoon, and there's that much ice on the pontoon. And so I meet Hal, and they had to hire local help. So it was a local boat driver and a local airplane man. That's always difficult because they don't know what's going on. They just know they're supposed to do this and that. But anyway, I mentioned to Hal, I said, I hope they get that ice off that pontoon. And he looked at it. He said, oh, yeah, and he'd call over special effects. He said, get the ice off the pontoon, get some corrugated rubber on there if there's none. So they did. And the first day we went out was, the lake was smooth as glass. Cold, in the middle of winter, January, I guess it was. And it was smooth. And we're in the speedboat. And he said, tells the boat driver, he says, you can't be under 80 miles an hour. You got to be over 80 miles an hour. Do not drop below 80. The plane can't come in, blah, blah, blah. And eyes on this boat driver says, I don't think he'd ever gone 80 miles an hour in a boat. But anyway, he did, and we got up to speed, and then here comes the airplane coming down to right up next to the boat for us to transfer. He goes first. He'd had an extra strut put on the airplane so that he could grab that when he transferred, and then he reaches back to grab my hand and pull me over. And now, if we'd have gone in the drink, that means we've cost a lot of time. We got to go back. We got to get dry. We got to, and then blah, blah, blah. So these are one-take things. And so we did it, and cold, oh God, I don't know how we got into the plane. Our hands were just locked off. But we did it, and we were both happy, and they kept us for the next day to see the footage to make sure they got it. First time I ever saw Hal Needham go berserk. He went berserk. He saw the footage. He says, where's the stunt? He says, where's the other camera? And the guy's production, oh, well, because you never saw us transfer. You just saw the side shot of going along. You never saw our stuff transferring, the difficulty of it. And so we got to do it again. He says, the production guy says, well, I don't think we can. He says, get me another lake. We'll go do it tomorrow. And now the wind is coming up and the weather's getting bad. We go back out. He said, give me another boat with a camera in it to be in the boat's our wake of our boat so that they see the transfer, the actual transfer. So they get that. But now because the lake is choppy, the boat and the plane are doing this, and making that transfer at the right time. Again, that's a one take. You only want to do it once. And at one point when we were doing that, I saw that had I not pulled Hal back by his collar, I had reached up because now the plane is coming back this way. His head would have been taken off by the propeller. So I yanked him back, and I said, I didn't want to do that, Hal. I'm sorry. He says, you shouldn't see how close your head was to that prop, the propeller. And he knew the difficulty with the boat and the plane going like this and this. So anyway, we got our speed, and the boat driver is even more concerned now. But we got the shot. And again, get the plane, we can hardly move our hands. We got the shot. And anyway, we go back, and he said, told production, well, we saw the footage and it was okay. You saw the transfer. And he said, pay the lady $1,000. Wow, that was the most money I'd ever gotten on an adjustment, $1,000 adjustment. But again, it's a one-take thing, you know. There's so many, if you can become a one-take artist in our business, that's what you want to do. You don't want to do it more than once, if you can help it. And that's, in fact, in the beginning of my career, when I'd work with just a director, I would say, I would block it with him. I would do it a slow-mo, and I would ask him, I said, would you mind if we shot the rehearsal, the first rehearsal? Because that's usually your most spontaneous take. And he said, no, not at all. So I would do that, and they liked it so much that I just kept with that. Do you mind shooting the rehearsal? And they said, no, because it is your most spontaneous take. And then I would say, well, do you want to see it again? And they say, no, no, it was fine. We got it. So, again, you become a one-take artist as quick as you can.
You mentioned the importance of camera placement as well. Who's in charge of working that out for stunts, where the camera will
Well,
be?
the cinematographer and the coordinator, and the director. They place the cameras.
Was Hal the stunt coordinator on that
Yeah,
shoot?
he was, but I don't think he realized that they didn't have the boat. He thought there was another camera, and there wasn't. So that's why we had to do it again, and he put the boat behind our boat so that they would see the transfer. So, you know, many things happen in a day's work like that can happen.
And you said you had to fly out there. Did production cover that cost, or
Oh,
did you
yeah. have
to get?
No,
Okay.
they fly. They take care of it. They take care of your lodging and your airplane. It's normal.
Mm-hmm. You also worked on Macmillan and Wife in the 1970s.
Yes, that was another kind of a good show for me, Macmillan and Wife, because I doubled for Susan St. James a lot. And again, sometimes I wouldn't work, but I'd be there just in case. And then just whatever she had to do physically that might hurt her, I would do.
What were some of the types of stunts you did on that show?
Oh, again, running. I think one was being involved in a fight of some kind. I remember some catwalk, up in a high catwalk running. They all sort of just, so many different things you do on a basis that it's hard to pinpoint each one.
Did you have to audition for stunts at that point, or were you kind of just called in?
No, it was just, is Julie Johnson available?
Mm-hmm. And as Susan's stunt double, you said you kind of were there and you'd wait around. So were you staff on that show, or were you kind of just on call when they needed a stunt?
Just on a call,
Okay.
whenever they thought they would need me, or if there was a specific action that they would want, that they wouldn't want her to do.
Is that typical when you're doubling one of the leads? They'll just
Mhm.
give you a call when they need you to come in?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And then you also worked on the 1972 TV movie Women in Chains.
Women in Chains, that was with Ida Lupino.
Mm-hmm.
I did a little fight, coordinated a little fight for that show in the jail cafeteria or something, I remember. It was just a tussle of some kind.
Was that your first time doing coordinator work?
Yeah, yes, recognized as. The one I enjoyed most was with Pete and Tilly at Universal with Carol Burnett and Walter Matthau. I was called by production saying that, Julie, the director wants to meet you out in the back lot. He wants you to coordinate a fight for him for Geraldine Page and Carol Burnett. Okay. So I go there and I meet him in the park, and he said, I have this, I want them to do it. And I'm thinking, oh no. He said, I have 3 cameras, this is where they're da-da-da. And he says they come out of the building across the street and they come into the park, and that's where this tussle starts. He said, but again, I don't want to see the typical woman fight where you're pulling hair and wrestling around. He says, they're going to have dialogue. They're going to use some of their dialogue that they want to use and improv, and just give them some business to do, so that it's that they can do. So I thought, okay. So I figured it all out, and I designed this fight in Pete and Tilly for them. And I thought, well, oh God, I hope it's funny. I snuck into the screening room when they were screening it for the crew, and I sat in the back. Just snuck in and sat there. Just when that scene came up, I wanted to see, if they were going to laugh. That they brought the house down. The crew. Now, when you crew laughs, it's funny because they were on it and they were there. But they didn't laugh when they were there. But boy, in the screening room, they really did. I thought, oh, thank goodness, they liked it. And but anyway, I was able to use my brains and design something that they wouldn't get hurt, but have some fun with.
So walk us through what designing is like for you. How do you do the choreography and teach it to the actresses?
Well, when you're coordinating, you get to see a script, of course. So once you see the script and you know the story, then your mind starts, your brain starts, and it kicks in for, okay, I can have a plan A and a plan B, and see if the director likes it.
So it would be a lot of one-on-one work with the director?
Yeah. I mean, you're presenting, you're working out something for the director to like or not like, or to change or not change. So that's the importance of the coordinator, plus the safety part of it is very important. So, coordinators are very, very important. It's just not enough, I would say, women coordinators at this point. But they're starting to come into their own at this point. There are a few out there now.
Why do you think there aren't more of them?
They don't think they have the knowledge or the capabilities or the technical knowledge to do it. But in reality, and I've always told those guys too, I said, there's never going to be that many women coordinators, only because it's technical and mechanics, et cetera, and a lot of women don't have that. But the ones that do and know about tools and how to set up stuff and rigging and all of that, they belong. If they want to be a coordinator, they belong, and they should have the opportunity.
So how did you learn all that? Just from working in the business?
Well,
so
I
long?
didn't, I mean, I was so observant in this business. I didn't spend my time in dressing rooms. I was always within earshot of the director and the cinematographer, absorbing, listening, learning. And then when it came time for me to use those skills, they would be there for me to pull on.
So these first couple times that you coordinated on Women in Chains and Pete and Tilly, were you paid as a coordinator and got credit as a coordinator?
No credits, no pay, just brought in for the day's work, accept a check, and that's it. But I got to use it as a credit on my resume. That was it.
Often you'll see stunts uncredited on someone's resume or IMDb or something. Is it uncommon to get a credit as a stunt person? Or talk a little bit about how you get a credit.
Well, depending on the time on the film and how many, the stunt people will get credit. They'll run stunts in the credit line at the middle or end, or sometimes after special effects they'll run stunts, and they usually they'll put in the coordinator, the second unit director, which is many times the coordinator.
Do you know how it's discussed or negotiated if someone is going to get
Well,
a
it's
credit?
negotiated with the person and the producer, and they come to their agreement. Yeah, you'll get credit.
So throughout the 1970s, did you feel, were there changes being made in the industry? Were you still seeing a lot of your concerns from the 1960s carrying through to the 1970s in terms of men doubling women? Or
Oh yeah, so this still goes on today. We're still fighting it. And if they get caught, they get sent to the guild, and the guild just slaps them on the wrist. I wrote in 2016, I wrote a 75-page report on our issues and gave 10 copies to the guild and 10 copies to the AMPTP, documenting stuff. And the only way you're going to stop it is to fine them. The producer has to be fined. The coordinator has to be fined. The stunt person who allows themselves to be painted down or dressed or wigged should be fined. I mean, if you came to me and said, Julie, I got to paint you down to do this job, or I got to darken you way down, I'd say, I'm backing up. I can't. That you're taking a job away from somebody that can do that. You shouldn't be painting me down. And besides, I don't want to get caught. If I get caught, I'm going to be fined big money. That would stop it.
Now, at the time, you formed the Society of Professional Stunt Women in 1975.
Yeah.
So tell us about that organization.
Well, that again, we started. It was like Stunts Unlimited splitting off from Stuntmen's Association. We had the women that didn't want to make waves or make any problems. They were just happy with the status quo. And then we had the women that were saying that, hey, you can't keep taking our jobs, guys, blah, blah, blah. We were the ones that were fighting the issues openly. And but so much of that just came to a screeching halt after myself and another stunt woman were hurt on Charlie's Angels. Now you get into the blacklist.
Well, you know what? Let's take a short break there, and then we'll jump into that story.
Oh, God.